Welcome to Salon Talks. I am Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this is Max Greenfield. He is an actor, a children's book author. I want to ask you about that, and an occasional TikToker, but you probably know him best as the quotable Schmidt from New Girl, as well as his guest roles on American Horror Story, films that I love, like Promising Young Woman and The Valet. I want to talk to you about everything. But of course, now he co-stars as Good Neighbor Dave on the CBS comedy The Neighborhood. Hi, welcome.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm okay. Talk to me about, you are now coming up on a really big milestone on your show, The Neighborhood, and to celebrate it, you have a special episode directed by your co-star, Cedric the Entertainer. Tell me about what you wanted as a cast and a crew to celebrate with this milestone episode.
You know, you can be on a show and as confident as you could ever be in that show and with the content and the people involved in it, to get past a pilot and then 13 episodes and then get a full season and then a second season. You just know that there's so many hurdles in front of you and so much of it's not in your control or has nothing to do with whatever quality of the show it is. So to get to 100 episodes is such a surreal feeling. And for me in particular, and with other people on our show as well who've experienced this is twice now for both myself and Cedric, Tashina, Beth. And so I think all of us collectively just, you just have this tremendous amount of gratitude, but it really is not so much just about us as a cast, but it's more about, everybody who works on the show and especially on a multicam like that, where you have so many people that are on stage and you're with them on a daily basis. It's a much more intimate environment. And I think we just all celebrated it together, quietly and happily and gratefully, and with the feeling that it'd be nice to do 100 more.
Sounds like a good start. But now you're also celebrating it publicly with this episode. You've got some special guests coming in. It's going to be a unique kind of an episode, right?
Yeah, well, it was fun to have Cedric direct the episode. Obviously, this is his show. He not only is the lead of the show, but he also is so instrumental in sort of setting the tone and the stories of the show. So to have him direct was sort of, it felt very fitting. And it was his idea to have a fun crossover with another CBS show. So we have the people from The Talk on. Jerry O'Connell, who's a longtime friend of mine, he comes on the show, and we go over to their show, and it was a lot of fun. It was good. It mixes it up.
When you get to be on as you say, to have a show that has this kind of durability, you get to change and evolve with your character. And I'm really curious about where Dave is now as opposed to where he was when we first met him. And if there's what you have seen him evolve into, how he's changed because of the things that have happened on this show, and maybe some things that you didn't know about him when you first signed on for this show.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, this is such a traditional sitcom in that the change in the characters is really slow and gradual. Because you don't want to see him change that much, because the audience started watching the show and liked it from the beginning, a certain way, and you fall in love with it, with a character, and you don't necessarily want to see them change. That's part of like what's so interesting about really traditional episodic television. New Girl was very different, and I think that character changed a lot, while Zoe, who was the lead of that show, and Jake's character sort of gradually moved forward, but they experienced a lot of their change through the events of things that were happening to my character. And it was very much different, very, very non-traditional way of doing it. but I do think, yeah, I don't know that Dave has changed that much as a character, and that's why I think one of the things I respect a lot about the show is that they've really stayed true to who he is and where he comes from, and I think he's learned a lot, and he's learned a lot in this new environment that they've moved into, but but I don't know that he's. I think the change has been very gradual and slow.
I think so too, but that's how it should be. And when you talk about New Girl, I know that when you started on New Girl, I read somewhere that you were concerned that your character was, and I'm quoting, maybe a little too douchey, and you worked on how that would not be the case. What was different about that? About
Well, I don't think it
evolving in
was.
a way, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that it was too anything. Um, I just knew that I didn't want it to be one note, and so one of the wonderful things that we did on that show was very early on. They had set up this relationship with Hannah Simone's character, and she was so wonderful on that show too. And we were able to sort of build this relationship early, um, that opened up a much different. I mean, that character typically is just running around and with all of these different women, who would come on as guest stars every week. But instead, uh, Hannah's character was set up as early and set to and established as the love of this guy's life very early on, and he never really wavered from that.
I'm wondering, were there shows that influenced you or impacted you when you were coming up as a young actor? You said, I want to be like that, or I want to be on a show like that.
Yeah, I mean, all the traditional multicam shows, whether it be Cheers, Taxi was a big one for me. I really love Taxi. I love the acting on Taxi. Um, but Cheers, Taxi, Seinfeld was a huge one. I used to joke when we were on New Girl, I'd be like, "We'll just knock down a wall and put in a live studio audience, and then we'll be making a real show." Um, and it was funny though, but it was really I'm not joking. I would say that all the time, and I really wanted to do a traditional multicam. And when New Girl ended, they're tough to find, because you got to do it right. And there's a lot of times you walk into a situational comedy and you're like, well, this is a fun situation for an episode, but I don't know that it lends itself to 100 episodes, which is where you want to get. And I felt so fortunate that this sort of showed up, and it happened in a wild kind of way, but I can't believe how well it's worked out.
When you talked earlier about being on a show with other people who are also veterans of these long-term sitcoms, they're these long-term shows. And when I talked to Hannah Simone a couple of weeks ago, she talked about how important that core group of people was and having that kind of chemistry. When you think back to when you were first looking into getting on this show, did you feel that right away? Did you feel like, oh, this is special, I'm clicking with these people in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I came onto it much later. And so, Cedric and Tashina, Marcel, Shion, everybody was on there already. And I got to see what they were doing, and, knew how special Tashina was, and obviously Cedric. Marcel and Shion looked like they had been doing this for 100 years. And that dynamic that they created with the Butler family was so strong, that I just thought, man, if we can somehow match what they're doing and level this out, it just felt like a show that had been on for a really long time, and you just never had seen it before. You were like, oh, okay, cool. And I think that's what's really nice about having people who, especially with, Cedric and Tashina, it's like, these people, this is just a different setting. And if we can get this right, this feels like it could be seamless. And that's what it has been.
And it's it when I think about some of the other things that you've done, like doing some arcs on AHS in that universe, or doing a movie like Promising Young Woman or The Valet, they're ensembles. You seem to just have a gravitational pull towards ensembles, but it's interesting seeing the way that then plays out in a horror or a thriller format. And I'm wondering, for somebody who's known mostly for comedy, what do you think comedy brings to horror and thrillers? Because you're not the only. There's a couple of you out there who have toes in both worlds.
I have no idea, but the idea of being a part of a lot of ensembles and just dipping into other things in general, I like. And even this was what happened with The Neighborhood too. I like working with people, and I like when cool people and interesting people and talented people seem to be a part of something, and I have an opportunity to join them. That's always exciting to me. So when you talk about like when Ryan Murphy calls you, obviously you show up. And then when he calls again, it's like the most exciting moment of your life. And The Valet was the same thing. I was such a huge fan of Eugenio, and so to get to be a part of that and watch him work and be on set with him was really exciting. And when I got to see Cedric and Tashina again, I was the last to be a part of this. So looking at those people, I said, we can figure this out. You don't necessarily look so much about, you don't think too much about, well, the character and this and that. I was like, I don't, my brain doesn't work that way. I'm like, they seem really good. They seem really talented. Let's match what they're doing, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Figure it out from there. So I want to ask you, in your past two TV shows, you have played a dad. I want to know, you're very public about being a dad as well. You're in your kids' room right now talking to me. What do your kids think about your performance as a dad on TV? Are they ever like, why can't you?
I'm in my son's room right now. It doesn't look great, but it's only because I'm redecorating.
There's no judgment. It looks fine. Didn't mean to put
It
you on
looks. I mean, we're mid move here.
I'm not going to ask for a 360. You don't have to do that.
I wouldn't know how to do it anyway.
Okay, but yeah, what do your kids think about your performance as a dad?
My son is like just starting to realize that I'm an actor, but I don't think he really knows what an actor is. He's seen The Neighborhood a couple times. I think he's really intrigued by the laugh track. So now he's like, he keeps trying to get laughs.
From
oh yeah, at home, any setting, which is really good for me because it keeps me entertained. And he's genuinely funny. He's got to work on some of his material, but his delivery is outstanding. And then my daughter goes back and forth with it. She's 13 and it's not ideal. I mean, I don't know. I would assume this is something that will work out eventually in therapy much later on in her life. But Schmidt is her dad, and that's all her friends are watching that show, and it's available to anybody, and it's weird. It's a weird thing. I don't know what to make of it. I'm still sort of processing it all right now.
But you are so immersed in your kids' lives. You've written a couple of books, not just for them, but for all of us. How did that come about? Tell me about your books.
Yeah, it was during the pandemic, and I was stuck at home very quickly with my daughter. We had just, we kind of just finished the show. I think we had 1 or 2 days left before everything shut down. So I was preparing myself to sort of be at home for a little bit. And and then everything went down and we were at home and my daughter was at home and they sent a curriculum and I said, whoa, this is not good for either one of us. Um, and we started doing these fun videos to like break up the day and we put it on Instagram and they got this incredible response. And there was responses from teachers who were saying, gosh, we miss our students and these videos are so great. It reminds me of being in class. And so we felt pressure to do more. And then first responders were reaching out to us and like, oh my god, these videos are great, but it reminds me of like what. And we felt more pressure. But anyway, so we got this tremendous response from doing them, and in the middle of that, a wonderful agent of mine who I'd never met, it was a lit agent, Albert, had called me and said, hey, would you ever do a book? And I thought, well, like a full length book, because that's not gonna happen. And he goes, well, what about like a picture book? And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I thought, well, if I was ever going to do a picture book, it'd be a book about all the reasons why you don't want to read a book, but by the end of the book, you've read a book. Because my kids don't like to read, and I argue with them every night about reading. And he was like, great, can I go pitch that? And I go, yeah, sure. and and I thought, it's actually a really good idea. It's a shame nothing will ever happen with that. And then he called me like 3 days later and was like, Penguin wants to do it. And I had so much fun writing it, and it couldn't have turned out any better. It's such a great time with Penguin and Mike Lowry, who illustrated it, and we felt like there was more to say. So we had the opportunity to do a second book, which is This Book Is Not a Present, and it's just a lot of the ideas from not wanting to read a book that's sort of mixed up in this what it's like for a kid who doesn't like to read to get a book as a present, and what that experience feels like. And then we have another one coming out later on this year that I guess I can talk about it, called I Don't Want to Read This Book Aloud, which is for kids who don't like to read out loud.
Because there's a lot of kids who aren't traditional learners or readers. I love that. I think that's really cool that it's speaking to the non-readers and giving them a place at the table too. I want to ask you.
Totally. I've read the book before for people, and some of them were like, "It seems like you don't want kids to read," and I was like, "Well, it's also a book." I'm like, if I was like throwing these ideas around in a YouTube video, maybe problematic, but it is formatted as a book, sir.
Seems like you have picked up those good conflict mediation skills after all, Max.
I'm a real diplomat.
I got to ask you one more question. You are so memeable, you are so quotable, Schmidt is. I want to know, when you are out in the world or you are on social media, what is the Schmidt quote that you hear the most? Is there a winner?
I get a lot of 29. I get a lot of all day. Those are probably the two big ones.
Yeah, we were betting on all day here. I got to say that was where the smart money.
I get some though that I don't remember having said on the show. It's a really disappointing moment for everyone, because they'll say it and they get very excited, and then I make a face like, what are you talking about? And then they have to explain the line to me, and then I think I'm losing my mind, because a lot of the time I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm also not going to go back and watch it.
Because they've already seen that episode like 100 times. They know it way better than you probably ever possibly could, Max, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think so too. But, well, I want to thank you so much for talking to me today. The show is The Neighborhood, 100th episode. Congratulations.
Pretty cool. Thank you so much.
100 more? 200 more?
I'd like that. I think 200 more is a stretch, but maybe 100 more.
Okay. All right. Well, come back to celebrate episode 200 with us then. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Bye, Max
I
Greenfield.
appreciate it. Thank you.